Florida State's season opener against LSU is just 2 days away now. Man, it feels good to be back. So here we are. We're going to do a little breakdown and prediction for this game. I'm going to try to be as unbiased as I can be, but it's hard when your team is looking as good as FSU is. But here goes. I figured I'd break this down into essentially three major storylines that'll play a huge part in determining the outcome of this game. The first one, and maybe the most crucial for both teams, is going to be Florida State's passing attack against LSU's secondary. FSU is rolling out an elite wide receiver group. We're talking top 5 receiver room in the entire country. Now, Florida State's offense was dynamic last year, but I think the pieces that have been brought into Tallahassee this offseason can graduate that offense to elite status. You already had Johnny Wilson, who's 6'7" and an absolute monster, but you also bring in Keon Coleman from Michigan State, who was probably the best player on that entire team and was productive even with an average quarterback throwing to him. You pair him with Jordan Travis, who's one of the Heisman frontrunners, it could get pretty scary. Not to mention Jaheim Bell, who I like as sort of almost like a Swiss Army knife in this offense. He's listed as a tight end, but can be really utilized as a receiver and a running back. So all these playmakers and an improved offensive line should really make it comfortable and easy for Jordan Travis to have his pick out there and put up points. That's even more so true as this LSU defense is depleted, missing star defensive lineman Mason Smith and Denver Harris, who's projected to be a starting defensive back for them, no longer with the team. So who did LSU bring in? One of the DBs they have is Deuce Chestnut, who's a Syracuse transfer. Now, Florida State played Syracuse last year and beat them 38-3. In that game, Deuce Chestnut was largely tasked with stopping Johnny Wilson, and Johnny bested him multiple times in that matchup. Now, of course, going from Syracuse to LSU is a big step up. Maybe Chestnut steps into that role, but even if he could guard Johnny, there's still other weapons on this offense, and LSU can't just double team everybody, which I think is essentially the only way you slow down an offense like this. It could be a long night for LSU's defense. Now, I'm not saying Jordan Travis is going to throw for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. This LSU defense is still no slouch. This brings me to my next point, that this FSU offensive line is going to have to keep Jordan Travis upright. Now, the offensive line has improved every year under Alex Atkins, and it was actually decent last year for the first time in a long time. Now I hope to see even another step of improvement out there in 2023. This will be a tall task, even with LSU missing a few key pieces on their defense. LSU, as I mentioned, is no slouch on the defensive line. They still have guys back there that they like, and of course, linebacker Harold Perkins, who is probably one of the best players in all of college football. He didn't really have much of an impact in this game last year, but he really came on later in the 2022 season and is now considered a full-fledged game wrecker. So we may see lots of moving pockets like usual, or maybe even some kind of double team from the offensive line on Perkins. This offensive line needs to do what they did in this matchup last year, which is protect Jordan Travis. Jordan Travis took 0 sacks in last year's game, and that was a huge part in them being able to be as successful as they were on offense. Especially with how close that game was, keeping Travis upright and looking downfield is crucial to winning this one. I think another key to this game will be Florida State's defensive line versus a good LSU offensive line. Florida State added in transferred defensive lineman Braden Fisk and defensive end Gilbert Edner from South Carolina. This adds to an already good defensive line with Jared Verse, who is projected to be a top 10 pick in the next NFL draft, but also Fabian Lovett, Josh Farmer, Dennis Briggs, and more. Now, this is shaped up to become one of the better defensive lines in the country, which is also kind of odd to say out loud considering where this team has been in the last several years. Now, LSU is good along the offensive line as well. Mason Taylor, they feel really confident with. It's been reported that LSU wants to attack more downfield than they did last year rather than relying just on Jane Daniels' legs. So they're going to look to get Daniels into a rhythm early and try to set the tone. I do trust Florida State's corners, even against a good wide receiver group led by Malik Neighbors. So I do expect some design runs and definitely some improvised runs from Jaden as product protection break down. Now this is where guys like Jared Verse, Kalen DeLoach, etc. are going to have to try to set the edge and contain him better than they did last year. I think these teams match up pretty well together. LSU may have more 5-stars or more NFL-ready guys, but I think as far as college rosters go, in 2023, Florida State's rolling out the better team. I just think they're so balanced both on offense and defense. A lot of talk on both sides has been, how do we shut down Jane Daniels, or how do we guard both Johnny Wilson and Keon Coleman? And I think the answer is, you really don't. I think both teams are going to score. Both teams are also going to get stops on defense. I think this game is not only going to be really entertaining, but very fascinating in the way of how do these coaches, and players for that matter, respond to the moment when the other team gets a score or gets a big play on defense. Like I said, I don't see either team completely shutting down the other, but it's going to come down to which team is the most balanced and which units can hold up for a full 60-minute battle. Keys for LSU to win, I think they just have to find a way to make Florida State one-dimensional and try to shut down the passing game somehow. I don't know really how you do that with this offense, but if Jordan Travis has 4 seconds in the pocket, he'll find someone to get the ball to, and they'll march down the field. If LSU wants to win, they've got to do something about this receiving corps from Florida State. And not so ironically, if Florida State wants to win, I think it's largely the inverse of what I just said. You got to find a way to defend Harold Perkins and keep Jordan Travis protected, air it out, take advantage of a depleted defense. Maybe we even see that flea flicker play again that led to a touchdown for FSU in last year's matchup. Either way, like all football games, this one's going to be one of the trenches. It's kind of weird. This game is shaping up to be very similar to the one last year. LSU is a slight favorite. They're without Mason Smith on the defensive line, and they're missing running back John Emery Jr. like they were last year. And to be honest, I see this game on the field playing out in a similar way as well. I think it'll be a close game. Maybe not 1 point close like last year's was, but like I said, I don't see either team necessarily blowing the other one out. That being said, I do have Florida State winning this game. I think Florida State just rolls out too good and too balanced of a team not to win. The only way I see Florida State really losing this game is if there's a lot of self-inflicted wounds, penalties, turnovers, things like that. But if Florida State can play sound, disciplined football like they have been, I really think they win this game. LSU, of course, will be competitive and may even have Florida State fans nervous at times in this game. But I feel like last year Florida State really controlled most of the game until the final few minutes, where it was one mistake after another, seemingly. I think this year Florida State cleans that up and takes care of business against a very good LSU team. I just think Florida State's offense is too dynamic to not put up at least 30 points or more. And I really think the defense can hold their own here as well and at least do enough to let Florida State outscore LSU. I just don't see this LSU defense, particularly the secondary, having the juice to slug it out against this Florida State receiving group for 60 minutes. So I have FSU winning somewhere in the neighborhood of 34-24, 34-28, something like that. Florida State leaves Orlando feeling really good about themselves as they prep for what should be a playoff run. How about it, guys? What do you think? Does LSU get the better of Florida State this time? Do the Noles go out and look even better than anticipated? Let me know your thoughts and score predictions in the comments below, and let's talk Noles.